Across the endless reaches of the galaxy, civilizations had risen and fallen like the tides of distant oceans. Their explorers, fueled by curiosity and ambition, mapped every corner of the known universe. Every star was catalogued, every planet logged, every anomaly given a name and a story. Bold lines and brilliant colors crisscrossed the great star charts that hung in the halls of every advanced world. Pride filled the hearts of those who believed there was no mystery left to uncover. But there was one place, one enormous, undeniable void, where every map ended. Human space. It was not marked with danger signs. There were no flashing warnings or desperate pleas, just a blankness so profound that even the most fearless cartographers refused to draw beyond it. An invisible wall stood there, and everyone, from the youngest student to the oldest general, simply accepted it. No one dared to ask why. Stories circulated in whispers. Some said that long ago, fleets of conquerors had tried to enter human space and were never heard from again. Others spoke of great envoys, peaceful and bearing gifts, who crossed the boundary and vanished without a trace. Some even believed the humans themselves had erased the memories of those who crossed, leaving only an instinctive fear behind. The younger generations were told to focus on what could be known, to expand trade routes and colonize the safer sectors of the galaxy. The unspoken rule was simple: there was plenty of space elsewhere, no need to go looking for trouble. Despite all this, the mystery gnawed at the edges of every adventurous mind. After all, humans had once been ordinary members of the galactic community. Records showed that, a few thousand cycles ago, they had been granted spacefaring rights like many other species. They had been industrious, curious, and quick to adapt. They had formed alliances, traded goods, and shared knowledge. Then, one day, they simply withdrew. They closed their borders without explanation. No wars, no ultimatums, no broadcasts demanding sovereignty. They just pulled back, retreating into the vastness of space, and erased all diplomatic ties. At first, many thought it was a political move, maybe internal conflict, maybe resource exhaustion. But decades passed, then centuries. Other species grew stronger, some even daring to think of humans as a forgotten footnote in history, until the expeditions began to vanish. First one ship, then another. Small research vessels, later followed by heavily armed fleets. None returned. No debris floated back across the border. No distress signals made it out. It was as if those who crossed into human space had simply been swallowed by the stars. No further expeditions were launched after that. Fear settled in. Not fear of war or revenge, but fear of the unknown. Fear of a power so absolute that it needed no display, no declarations, just a silence more terrifying than any battlefield. And so the galactic maps were left unfinished. A clean, sharp edge at the frontier. A simple, chilling note written in bold letters on every chart. Here lies human space. Do not enter. And everyone knew, without needing to be told, that some questions were better left unasked. The Grand Assembly Hall was silent, the air thick with centuries of intergalactic politics. Leaders of the galaxy's most powerful species filled the room, their faces grim as they discussed the state of affairs across the known universe. Trade routes were shifting, alliances were forming, and conflicts loomed just beyond the horizon. Yet despite the pressing matters at hand, one subject was never broached, until one fateful day when a voice broke the silence. Tarek, a young Zelveni scholar, stood at the edge of the room, eyes fixed on the holographic star maps that hovered above the table. His species was known for its sharp intellect and relentless curiosity, and Tarek was no different. He had spent his entire life studying the stars, mapping anomalies, and uncovering the mysteries of the universe. But there was one part of the galaxy he could never forget: the empty expanse at the edge of known space, where the map simply ended. He had heard the stories, of course. He had listened to the hushed whispers from his elders and the more seasoned explorers. No one went into human space. No one even spoke about it, unless it was with a sense of deep reverence and quiet fear. But Tarek couldn't help himself. The question that had plagued him since childhood now bubbled to the surface. He raised his hand, a gesture that seemed so small in a room full of powerful beings, but it carried an immense weight. The murmurs of the crowd faded as all eyes turned toward him. Even the council leaders paused their discussions, their expressions unreadable but filled with something darker. Perhaps caution, perhaps dread. Tarek took a deep breath and spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Why does the map end at human space?" A ripple of unease swept through the room. No one spoke at first. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and for a moment, Tarek wondered if he had made a grave mistake. He had always been taught that some things were better left unsaid, especially when it came to human space. But the question had escaped him before he could stop it. The silence stretched. A few of the older members of the council shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging furtive glances. No one seemed willing to answer. The tension was palpable, thick enough to feel in the back of Tarek's throat. Finally, the eldest council member, a tall and weathered Omnari named Gorvith, spoke in a low, measured tone. "Some questions are better left unanswered, young Zelvani," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of experience. "The boundaries of human space are not for us to cross, nor for us to question." Tarek's heart pounded in his chest. He had expected some resistance, but not this. The entire room, filled with some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, was united in their silence, their refusal to even acknowledge his question. A shiver ran down Tarek's spine. The fear in their eyes was undeniable. He tried to push further. But why? What happened there? Why are we not allowed to even explore? If they've retreated, shouldn't we understand why? It's not like... "No," Gorvath interrupted, his voice firm, cutting off Tarek's words. "Some boundaries exist for reasons that have nothing to do with politics or war. Human space is different. Understand this. The silence is the answer." Tarek's mind raced, his curiosity screaming at him. But the room was no longer a place for questions. It was a place of old, unspoken truths, and the silence was deafening. As Tarek stood there, his heart heavy with unanswered questions, he realized that he had crossed a line. He had asked what no one dared ask, and now the weight of the galaxy's unspoken fears was pressing down on him. That night, Tarek couldn't sleep. The council's words echoed in his mind, gnawing at him. The fear he had seen in their eyes, the way they avoided his question. There was something more to the silence than he could comprehend. The more he thought about it, the more the mystery clawed at him. The silence was not just a boundary. It was a warning no one would admit to. Unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Tarek slipped out of his quarters and made his way to one of the quieter sections of the station. The halls were dimly lit, and the usual bustle of the council chambers had long since faded. The station felt like a ghost ship, haunted by the weight of untold secrets. He didn't know why he was drawn here, but something inside told him that if he didn't find answers now, they would forever remain out of his reach. He rounded a corner and spotted an old figure leaning against the wall. Gorvath, the council elder who had warned him earlier. The Omnari's once proud form had slumped with age, but his eyes still held the sharpness of a seasoned warrior. Tarek hesitated for a moment, then approached. "Gorvath," he said softly, trying to hide the urgency in his voice. "I need to understand. Please, tell me what you know about human space. What really happened?" Gorvath didn't immediately respond. He stared at Tarek for a long time, as if weighing whether or not to reveal what lay hidden beneath his calm exterior. Finally, he sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of countless generations. "The stories. They're not just stories, Tarek," he began, his voice low and cautious. "There were once fleets, great fleets, full of the best our species had to offer. Explorers, scientists, diplomats, all sent to make contact with the humans. And they never returned. Not a single one." Tarek swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. But what happened to them? Why were they lost? Gorvat's eyes grew distant, as if he were reliving something painful. That's the thing no one will ever speak of. Not directly, not openly. But we know, or at least we believe, that human space is not like any other. Their technology is beyond anything we've ever encountered. They have weapons, Tarek. Weapons that don't just kill, they erase. It's not that they conquer. It's that they make sure there's nothing left to conquer. Tarek's blood ran cold. He had heard the stories, the rumors. But now, standing before Gorvat, the truth hit him like a brick. Erased. What do you mean? I mean, Gorvat's voice dropped to a near whisper, that those fleets were wiped from existence. Not a ship, not a crew member, not a single piece of debris. It's as if they were never there in the first place, and that's what terrifies us. Not the idea of war, but the idea that humans, they could make us disappear without a trace. Tarek felt a chill run through him. The question that had begun as simple curiosity now felt dangerously close to a fatal obsession. But why? Why haven't they attacked us? Why haven't they? No one knows, Gorvat interrupted sharply. They could wipe us out in an instant if they chose. But they don't. That's the true terror. The fact that they can, and yet they don't. The only reason human space is still here, Tarek, is because they allow it. They could end it all with a thought, and they choose not to. That is the greatest mystery of all. Tarek stood frozen, his mind racing. The weight of what Gorvat had said crushed down on him. It wasn't just the unknown that made human space dangerous. It was the undeniable power of those who resided there. Power so absolute that it defied comprehension. Do you still want to know more? Gorvat asked quietly, his voice tinged with regret. Some boundaries are meant to keep us safe. Some things are better left alone. Tarek's mouth went dry, but his resolve only hardened. He didn't know what he would find beyond the border, but he knew one thing for sure now. There was no turning back. Tarek's mind was made up. He couldn't let the fear, or the warnings, hold him back any longer. The more the galaxy shied away from human space, the more he felt drawn to it. It was the final frontier, not just of the galaxy, but of everything known to civilization. If no one else would uncover the truth, then he would. He would be the one to break the silence. He didn't waste time. Within hours of his conversation with Gorvat, Tarek gathered a small but determined crew, a mix of brave souls from different species, each driven by the same restless curiosity. They were the outcasts, the ones who weren't satisfied by the safe routes and known worlds. Together, they would venture into human space, to cross the forbidden boundary and uncover whatever lay beyond. The expedition ship, the Vanguard, was a sleek vessel designed for deep space exploration, equipped with state-of-the-art technology. It was fast and maneuverable, built to survive the harshest conditions. Still, as Tarek stood on the bridge, staring at the vast expanse of stars, a knot of unease tightened in his chest. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was strangely comforting, but it couldn't quiet the growing sense that they were about to do something irreversible. As the crew prepared for departure, Tarek felt a mixture of excitement and dread. He had heard the rumors, of course, the terrifying stories about the humans, but he had dismissed them as exaggerations, as fear-mongering by those who didn't understand. He had believed that nothing truly dangerous could exist beyond the known map, that the humans had simply chosen to be isolated. After all, they hadn't made any attempt to conquer or destroy other species, right? But now, with the Vanguard on its way to the edge of the galaxy, Tarek wasn't so sure. The warnings of the Council and the Elders weighed heavily on him. Perhaps this wasn't just about discovering the truth. Perhaps it was about something more, something they couldn't even begin to understand. The stars around them shifted as they approached the boundary, the line on the map that had never been crossed. Tarek watched with a mix of anticipation and anxiety as the ship's sensors picked up the familiar stereo readings of space. No signs of life, no anomalies, just the cold expanse of the unknown. For a brief moment, it almost felt like the stories were just that, stories. But as the Vanguard crossed the border, a strange sensation settled over the crew. It wasn't just the absence of communication. It was the oppressive silence that filled every corner of the ship. The moment they crossed into human space, the calmness that had defined the galaxy up until now seemed to fade, replaced by an invisible weight that pressed in from all sides. Tarek felt it, too. It was as if the universe itself had shifted, the rules of physics and reality subtly altered. There was no mistaking it now. They had crossed into a realm where things were no longer under their control. The journey was no longer just about exploration. It was about survival. The crew kept their eyes on the empty space ahead. Nothing moved. No ships. No signs of life. Only the cold expanse stretched endlessly before them. They were far from home, alone in a place where curiosity could either bring enlightenment or destruction. "Should we turn back?" one of the crew members asked, his voice shaky. "This place, it feels wrong." But Tarek, standing firm, shook his head. "No turning back now. We've come too far." And with that, the Vanguard pressed deeper into human space. The silence that hung in human space was like nothing Tarek had ever experienced. It wasn't the absence of sound. Space was, after all, a silent place by nature. It was something deeper, a sense of stillness that pervaded everything, as if the very fabric of reality was holding its breath, waiting. And yet, nothing came. No signals, no ships, no signs of life. For hours, the Vanguard drifted deeper into the uncharted vastness, the stars around them appearing cold and distant, untouched by the chaos of the galaxy. The crew, though nervous, was resolute. They had crossed the line, and there was no turning back now. But as time stretched on, doubt began to seep in, like a slow tide creeping over the shores of their certainty. "Maybe this was a mistake," muttered Oren, a young and impetuous crew member who had been the first to volunteer for the expedition. His eyes scanned the empty void outside the viewport, his unease palpable. "There's nothing here. No signs, no markers. Maybe the humans really just abandoned this place." Tarek wanted to believe him. He wanted to think that the fear was just a product of their imaginations, that human space was simply an empty, forgotten corner of the galaxy. But something in his gut told him otherwise. And then, just as the unease in the crew was about to turn into full-blown panic, it happened. A ship appeared. It was small, almost unremarkable at first glance. Just a simple silhouette against the vast backdrop of stars. But something about its presence felt wrong. The ship moved with an eerie precision, as if it had been waiting for them. Its design was unlike anything Tarek had ever seen. The edges were sleek, almost too perfect, and it seemed to shimmer in a way that defied the laws of physics. Tarek's heart skipped a beat as the ship closed the distance between them with unnatural speed. No communications came through. No hails, no warnings. It was just there, silent and watching. The crew on the Vanguard scrambled to prepare. The ship's sensors flared to life, trying to make sense of the unknown vessel. But no data came through. No readings on weapons. No life signs. Just nothing. And then, without a word, the small ship moved into position directly in front of them. The Vanguard's crew stood frozen, staring at the strange vessel. The air felt thick with tension. It was as though the ship had always been there, waiting, patiently watching from the shadows. Suddenly, a transmission came through. Direct, clear, and unsettlingly calm. "Turn back." The voice was human, but not like any human voice Tarek had heard before. It was devoid of any emotion, just a statement, an order. The crew stiffened at the sound. Tarek's breath caught in his throat. The tone was not aggressive, not threatening, but there was a finality to it. A certainty that seemed to echo through every molecule of space around them. "Who are you?" Tarek asked, his voice shaking, though he tried to maintain control. "What do you want?" The ship didn't respond immediately. For a long moment, nothing moved. The silence stretched between them, hanging in the vacuum of space. And then, the message came again, simple and unwavering. "Turn back." Tarek's heart pounded. There was no room for negotiation, no explanation, only a command. The crew exchanged looks, their fear palpable. But Tarek, his resolve hardening, met the gaze of the mysterious ship. "We're not turning back," he said, his voice quieter but firm. "We need to know what's beyond this boundary." And with that, the Vanguard pressed forward into the unknown, determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The Vanguard pushed forward, its engines humming steadily as it defied the silent warning. The mysterious ship hovered just beyond their reach, its presence looming like a shadow, but it didn't follow. Instead, it stayed perfectly still, as if watching, waiting for something. The crew aboard the Vanguard remained tense, every eye on the strange craft that seemed to defy the natural laws of the universe. Tarek stood at the helm, his mind racing. He had always believed that the galaxy's mysteries could be unraveled with enough courage and intellect. But now, staring into the void ahead, he wasn't so sure. There were no answers here, just more questions, more unknowns. "We can't go back now," Tarek muttered to himself, more for his own reassurance than anything else. "We've come too far." His words were hollow. He didn't feel the certainty he had once had. The warning had been clear, and now they were crossing a threshold no one had dared to cross before. If they continued forward, there would be no going back to the life they once knew. They would be venturing into something far beyond their comprehension. At the back of the bridge, Oren paced nervously, muttering under his breath. "What if this is a trap? What if we're not supposed to be here?" Tarek's gaze remained fixed on the star-streaked view ahead. "We won't know unless we push forward." And then, as though answering his unspoken resolve, the ship ahead of them moved. But it didn't just shift in space, it shifted in time. The small craft flickered and seemed to stretch, its edges warping and twisting like the fabric of reality itself. The crew gasped in shock. Tarek's heart pounded as the ship's impossible movement sent a chill through his spine. The laws of physics, the very rules they had relied upon their entire lives, had suddenly become irrelevant. And then the ship vanished. No explosion, no crash. It simply disappeared. The Vanguard continued its journey forward, but now the stars around them seemed different. The lights of distant galaxies had become dim, distorted. The familiar sense of space, the comforting feeling that they were connected to something vast and living, began to fade. It was replaced by an eerie sense of isolation. "Captain," one of the crew members said, his voice strained, "I'm getting strange readings. The map's starting to glitch." Tarek turned to face him, his eyes narrowing. The ship's systems were malfunctioning. The galaxy they had known was slipping away, replaced by something that could not be understood, not even with the best technology the galaxy had to offer. A shiver ran down Tarek's spine. They were no longer in a galaxy they recognized. Whatever lay ahead, it wasn't just unexplored territory. It was something entirely different. "Report," Tarek said, trying to keep the growing panic from his voice. "We've lost all external communication," the crew member said, his hands trembling over the controls. "The stars, they don't make sense anymore. Nothing's lining up." Tarek stared at the readings on the screen, his stomach tightening. They had crossed a point of no return. No map, no technology, no wisdom had prepared them for what lay beyond this boundary. And as the ship continued to drift forward, they all understood something fundamental. Human space wasn't just an empty void. It was a place where the rules of the universe themselves were in flux, a place where even the most powerful species had been erased, and they had just crossed into that realm, where nothing would ever be the same again. The atmosphere on the Vanguard was thick with tension. The crew moved about the ship in a dazed haze, unable to grasp the full magnitude of what was happening. The once familiar star maps were now riddled with errors, their coordinates shifting unpredictably. The ship's systems hummed erratically, like an old, malfunctioning relic struggling to adapt to an unknown force. Tarek stood in the command center, his eyes scanning the readings in front of him, but no matter how much he tried to make sense of them, the numbers refused to align. Nothing made sense. The space they were in felt wrong, like a dream that was just beyond reach of full comprehension. "We've crossed into something we can't understand," said Tarek, his voice hoarse. This isn't just uncharted space. It's something else entirely." Oren, who had grown more agitated by the minute, was at the communications console, pressing buttons and switching channels. "There's nothing. No signals, no traffic, no life signs. It's like we're completely alone." "Not alone," Tarek murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "There's something here." The ship continued to drift forward, guided by nothing more than inertia, as if the universe itself had lost interest in them. And yet there was a constant hum, a strange vibration that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of space itself. Then the transmission came again, clear and crisp, as if it had been waiting. "Leave now." The voice, once again, was human, but it lacked the warmth or emotion one would expect from another living being. It was a cold, unfeeling command, as though the very voice itself was nothing more than a distant echo of something far greater. Tarek clenched his fists, a sense of urgency mounting inside him. They had been warned, yet here they were, still pressing forward. The crew was starting to show signs of fear, and Tarek could feel the weight of their doubt pressing down on him. He had led them this far, but how much further could they go before the consequences became too much? "We need to get answers," Tarek said, his voice firm but strained. "We can't just turn back now. We've come too far. We need to understand why this place exists, why human space is like this." A low, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the ship, and suddenly a ripple appeared in the space ahead of them. It started as a small flicker, like a mirage, but then it grew larger, expanding outward until the stars themselves bent and twisted around it. The ship seemed to be distorting, the edges of reality warping, as if the universe itself were tearing open. "Captain," shouted one of the crew members, his voice rising in panic. "Look, something's coming through." The ship was drawn toward the anomaly, pulled in by an invisible force. No controls could stop it. The Vanguard was helpless as the space around them distorted, folding and collapsing like the pages of a torn book. Tarek could only watch in horror as the anomaly grew larger, its shape becoming clearer. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't a station, it was something much, much more. A massive structure loomed ahead of them, dark and imposing, stretching beyond the boundaries of what Tarek could even comprehend. It was not made of metal or any known material. It was as if the very fabric of space had been twisted into the shape of this monolithic creation, a thing so ancient and vast that its true purpose was beyond their understanding. "Are we inside it?" Oren whispered, fear evident in his voice. Tarek swallowed hard. "I don't think we're inside it. I think it's inside us." And as the Vanguard was drawn closer, Tarek knew that whatever lay ahead would either unlock the greatest mysteries of the universe or destroy them all. The Vanguard crept closer to the massive structure, drawn in by an unrelenting force that made the ship feel insignificant in comparison. Tarek could feel his pulse quicken, his breath shallow as the weight of the moments settled over him. The crew was silent, their faces pale and drawn. They had crossed into the unknown, and now they were face to face with something beyond any of their imaginations. The structure, an impossible behemoth that seemed to stretch on forever, had no visible entry point. It was as if it existed outside the laws of physics, its surface constantly shifting, rippling like water disturbed by an unseen hand. Tarek couldn't comprehend it. Not fully. No one could. It was as though the universe itself had been twisted into a shape that defied understanding. As the Vanguard drifted closer, the ship's systems seemed to flicker, then go completely dark. The stars outside had all but vanished, replaced by a swirling void. The crew's breath caught in their throats. They were no longer just in a different part of space. They were in something else, something that lay outside of time, outside of reality. Suddenly, the transmission came again. The voice, human, cold, and unyielding, rippled through the darkness, clearer than ever before. "You should not have come." The words sent a chill through Tarek's spine. There was no anger in the voice, no malice, only an unmistakable finality, as if it were simply stating a fact, a rule that had been in place long before their arrival. "What is this place?" Tarek's voice was barely a whisper. The words seemed hollow in the oppressive silence. "You are in the place where boundaries cease to matter," the voice responded, its tone almost pitying. "Where the rules of space and time break down, and the past and future exist simultaneously. This is the edge of human space, the point where we stop being what you think of as human." Tarek's heart hammered in his chest. "Who are you?" "We are the ones who remain," the voice replied. "We were once like you. Explorers, seekers, but we reached the boundary and crossed it, just as you have. We discovered what lies beyond, and we chose to stay." The realization hit Tarek like a physical blow. "You're the ones who never returned," he breathed, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The ships, the fleets, the lost explorers, all of them had crossed the boundary, and now they had become something else, something beyond recognition. "We did not disappear," the voice said, almost regretfully. "We were changed, transformed. You will be too, if you remain here. It is the price of crossing the boundary. To be something other." Tarek felt his thoughts fragmenting. The universe around him was warping, and the crew was falling into a trance-like silence. They had come here seeking answers, but the answers they had found were terrifying. They had crossed into a space where reality itself was mutable, where the very concept of what it meant to be human was being stripped away. "We can't leave," Tarek whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "We're already here." "Yes," the voice confirmed. "And you will remain, just as we have." The Vanguard shuddered as the boundaries of space and time began to close in, and Tarek realized that their journey had come to an end. The truth of human space had been revealed, not in the form of destruction, but in transformation, and there was no going back.